Good day. This is a webinar by myself, Lat Blaylock, editor of RE Today magazine and initiator of the Spirited Arts competition that NATRE runs every year. This webinar is for secondary teachers to encourage you to involve your pupils in the competition for the coming year in 2022. And it provides you with loads of inspirational examples of young people's creative religious education. Over the next 60 minutes, I'm going to introduce you to the 5 themes for the Creative Spirited Arts competition that NATRE runs every year and illustrate each of those with several examples that you might want to share with your students. I'd really like to encourage you to think of building the competition into your religious education work, or indeed if you're from Scotland RME or from Wales RVE, to use this work as a way of getting the best creativity into religious education and out of your pupils. I'm going to use examples all the way through, and the first of those is a poem by 16-year-old John. Where is God? I've got him. I have God tied up in my basement. I have tied him up using ordinary string. I have tied him to an ordinary chair. Doesn't seem so great now, does he? Never mind why I have him. If he got himself into this mess, don't you think a great Lord could get out? If you ever want to see God again, send me £100,000 in an unmarked bag, or alternatively £5 a viewing, £10 a picture, £50 a punch. What an interesting poem from John. It's not exactly atheist, is it? Because he's got God tied up in his basement, but he does want to give God a punch. And what kind of experience or what kind of theologizing or what kind of philosophizing would lead John to articulate his view about God in this creative bit of poetry? The competition that we've been running every year since 2004, is for exactly this kind of self-expression that's well informed and thoughtful and provocative and engaged and open-minded and sometimes big-hearted. All of those kinds of self-expression, those kinds of engagement in religious education issues. Spirited Arts is an annual competition. We take sculpture, tapestry, music, dance, video. Those forms of art have all run prizes previously, but most of the entries that we get are 2D figurative and visual arts. The key thing is not the art, it's not the art form, it's about the spiritual ideas and your learners' skills in expressing those ideas. We maintain a massive online art gallery. I think it's wonderful, with poetry collections there as well. And each year, tens of thousands of pieces of art and creative RE are made and sent in, and some of the best are on show on the website. So you might get your pupils to look at the art and poetry on the website as good modelling in religious education, and maybe their work will feature there next time. Worth spending some time having a look. That's the 2021 click-through reference, and this is a promotional webinar for the 2022 competition. I'm going to argue that RE needs a creative dimension. Some people see the subject as rather an intellectual enterprise, gathering rich knowledge of different religions, compiling factual understandings of the beliefs they study. And I'm all in favour of that. I always have been. I love it when pupils know a lot about the Christians and the Muslims and the atheists. But there's also a rich history and a present focus in some ways on expressing pupils' own views as a result of the work they do in RE. Good RE should enable pupils with clarity, with insight, with a rich knowledge behind them to express their own ideas with genius. And the Ofsted research report in England, taking a very broad view, as I read it, of RE's rich knowledge, that's about helping pupils to see their own positionality, their standpoint, and to say, this is where I come from, my viewpoint, my ideas, my responses to the material I'm studying. Maybe that's where each pupil's creativity comes in. And then I noticed this, that religions are very creative entities. In their most dynamic phases, they create giant sculpture, amazing temples, extraordinary tapestries, cathedrals, mosques, poetry, Handel's Messiah, the Sistine Chapel, and the Quran. And all of that creativity found in every religion, it's testimony to human creative powers applied spiritually through the structures of religions. And then, as well as that, pupils are creative. So this competition provides for many pupils, tens of thousands every year, to do their best RE ever, the piece of RE work that they're most proud of. And I would encourage you to enable pupils to take advantage of the creative opportunities that this competition provides by doing some Art in Heaven spirited arts work in the coming 6 months. I want to show you some examples, and here's the first one. This is by 10-year-old Eleanor, an artwork inspired by lockdown. We're all in this together, people said. We're working hard to fight off COVID. So I represented different countries, different people, different religions in this artwork. I wanted to use the flags as the masks. We have more in common than that which divides us, as Joe Cox MP, the late Joe Cox, said. It made me think how many people are diverse. The world is all different, but we are still one human race working together. Isn't that a beautifully crafted piece of work, and interestingly expressed as well by a pupil who's still in primary school? Here's another. Skyler is also in year 6 at primary school and has made the cube of questions. And the piece of artwork is a response to Joe Cox's sentence, "We have more in common than that which divides us." No matter, says Skyler, what race or faith or religion we follow, the black box represents all the different questions that the religions are yet to answer, and the symbols, all the different faiths surrounding the cube. The faiths are all in the same cloud, all in the same universe, all humans are. And since the dawn of time, we've wondered, how did we come to live? Is there a God? Different religions give different answers, and it's caused conflict. She gives an example between Christianity and Hinduism of a difference of view. It seems unfortunate, says Skyler, that not everyone shares the same questions, but not always respects the fact that there are different answers. But we do have our humanity in common. I wonder what you think of Skyler's work. What if one of your 11-year-olds brought that in and said, "Miss, sir, here's me homework"? I'd be thrilled, because it's a personal, individual, creative, unique, I think, engagement with some of the big questions of human diversity. And this piece of work from a 12-year-old just is called "No Commentary Needed," because it does indeed, doesn't it, speak for itself around the sentence from Joe Cox, which we've been using as one of the themes of our competition. We're all human. We're all human, blind or white or black, OCD or deaf or anorexic, female or mixed race, Jewish or Muslim, amputee, gay, young or trans. We're all human. No commentary needed. And this one from a 12-year-old girl called "Diversity and Unity." She describes it like this. "My vision for humanity is not that we should all be the same. It's good that we might be Sikh or Muslim, Christian or Buddhist or no religion. But the vision is we can be united and celebrate what makes us unique." Those 5 images from pupils in the early secondary years responded to the theme that we used last year and we're using again this year, Joe Cox's interesting and powerful sentence, "We have much more in common than that which divides us." And we're proud to be working with the Joe Cox Foundation on this competition this year again, and working with them jointly to judge the entries and jointly to use the entries in their work to promote human unity in the UK, and our work in religious education to explore the values of tolerance and respect. I wonder if there's space in your RE, RME, RVE curriculum for a piece of work about unity and diversity, a piece of work about what unites us, even though some things divide us, a piece of work in which pupils can express ideas about tolerance and respect, and the kind of skill and clarity that those 5 youngsters whose work you've just seen does. And that theme, this is how we've set it for the coming year. The theme about the question, are we one human race despite our differences? Religions are different, but are we all the same too? What unites us? Faith, hope, love, music? What threatens to tear us apart? Hatred, division, disunity? Do different religions in themselves divide us, or can different religions live in harmony? Often we say to pupils as they engage in the competition, do use some quotations, do use some information. Don't just give us your opinions, but back it up with your study of religions. And the best entries, the winning entries, often do that. So, for example, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says the Christians and the Muslims should be the nearest in affection. That's an interesting hadith, isn't it? Get pupils to think about that one. Or St. Paul in Christian scripture says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, but all are one in Christ Jesus. What did St. Paul mean by that? And why have the churches often had a poor record of emphasizing human unity and ended up reinforcing prejudice? There's loads, isn't there, to think about there in terms of the specific religions that you study with your pupils. So make sure that when they tackle the theme, if you do, we have far more in common than that which divides us as an Art in Heaven theme this year. Make sure that you use some profound material from inside religions, as well as maybe the different disciplines by which we study this: psychology, sociology, ethics, to help pupils create their responses. That's the first theme for 2022. And the second is an environmentalist theme, a green religion theme. God's good earth with a question mark at the end of it. Does a beautiful world like ours imply a wonderful God? And what about the spoiling of the earth that we've been involved in so terribly, dreadfully, extensively in recent centuries? Of course, religions often celebrate the beauty of nature, but the human impact on the planet at the moment has raised terrifying issues about climate justice and the whole future of humanity. Challenge pupils here again to use some scripture from different religions. There's creation stories and defenses of nature and paeans of praise to the beautiful world in which we find ourselves living in many religions, scripts and texts. Go for those and make sure that pupils have rich resources to draw upon if they want to make a God's good earth answer to the spirited arts question. We've used this theme for 2 years now, and it's become the most popular theme because young people are very interested and concerned about creativity around the questions of climate change and climate justice. So here's a few examples. I wonder if you're impressed by 8-year-olds who can think like Charles. I don't believe in any religion, he says. And then he gives a sort of description of evolution, life forms evolving in the ocean. And then the humans came along and invented plastic. And Charlie invited all the pupils in his class in year 4, to bring in all the plastic bottle tops that they had in their family. They collected for weeks. And Charlie then made bottle top turtle to show his idea that the plastics are destroying sea life, creatures slowly dying. These creatures, turtle is valuable in the same way that a human is. And then he asked his big punchline theological question. I believe if there was a God, well, would he really let this happen? I wonder if a pupil in your school, secondary school, 11, 12, 13, brought that piece of work. It's nearly 2 meters wide. It's about 1 meter deep. If a pupil brought that in, would you be pleased? And Charlie is 8 and has done that. You have a look at Rosie, who's also 8 and has made the tree of life out of a load of painted pebbles and then mounted the painted pebbles onto her background and her tree image. She says the tree is the center of the earth. Every animal, every person relies on the tree for shelter, for food, for oxygen, but the tree needs people to be respectful there and honorable too. If you let that happen, then the tree fills the world with life and laughter and makes God's good earth a happy place. But if we don't respect the trees, then the animals, the insects, the plants, they'll never recover. They'll crumble away. They'll just be destruction. You can't see in this picture show. I've done some close-ups, the beauty of the individual pebbles which go to make up this tree image. But look at these, some of Rosie's favorite things in the world of nature: the dragonfly, the woodpecker, the owl, the elephant, the badger, and so on, beautifully made. One of the ways in which Art in Heaven competition works is it encourages children, young people to go way beyond the norm, not just to say, I'll finish now, I'm stopping, but to go way beyond and bring their creativity beautifully into focus in their RE work. Do you want that for your classes? I can't think why you wouldn't. Here's a reason to invest in and encourage pupils to take part in the Spirited Arts competition. Amy's next, and she's in year 6, and she's drawn, first of all, in pencil, this picture, I think, of herself, and then in her head, she's drawn where her brain would be, a picture of the half-burned earth, and arising around her shoulders, the dreadful sea of plastic. The girl's head is full, an overheated world, real or imaginary, just imagination now, but in 10 years it's real, says Amy. The sea full of plastic and dead fish rises round her shoulders. We have ruined it all for the fish and ourselves. Literally, we're drowning in our own stupidity. God help us. It's more of a kind of campaigning piece, isn't it, from 10-year-old Amy? Again, as a secondary teacher, I'd have been thrilled to receive such a piece of work from one of my pupils in 14 or 15-year-old classes. And that tells me that sometimes we set our ceilings too low for pupils in RE. And one of the things that the Art in Heaven competition does is it smashes those ceilings and encourages pupils to fly as high as they can, intellectually, creatively, imaginatively, in their RE work. And they fly like this. This group of girls have produced Guidance, Organisation and Deliverance, GOD, a poster that shows their understanding of the need for future care of the earth in terms of pagan and Hindu insights. The girls, 12-year-olds, they say, this picture, Mother Earth, we've taken ideas from the Hindus there, Brahman, the concept of the ultimate reality, and the idea from pagans, Mother Earth, based on the worship of nature. God is like a mother. She has given us life. She sustains us. The work's spiritual, say the girls, because it might remind you that Earth is a gift and we belong to it and we should look after it. So this is really relevant at the moment because we're at a stage, at a moment when we really need to care, put the earth before our own desires. Not only, I'd say, are they right, but they've also combined truth with beauty, because isn't it a beautifully made image? Look there, can you see the giraffe, the bear, and the elk? Can you see the birds of the air and the stars of the sky? And can you see the mushrooms? It's gorgeously made. And then Amnique from Stratford has been studying the book of Job in religious education, chapter 12. And in chapter 12, God speaks and says, sorry, no, not God speaks. One of Job's friends speaks in chapter 12 and says that only God can see because he's omnipotent and omnibenevolent and omnipotent. And Job, well, he can't see everything. In some ways, Job can only see his own suffering. So in Job 12, ask the animals, says the text, and they'll teach you. The birds in the sky, they'll tell you. Speak to the earth and they'll teach you. Let the fish inform you. It's very interesting, isn't it? But in response to the God's Good Earth theme, this 14-year-old finds ancient text from maybe 2,700 years ago, a source of inspiration. The piercing intensity of Job's eyes in Amnique's picture. And then we have this one, a 15-year-old who doesn't want us to use their name, actually, so we don't. But this 15-year-old has painted humanity with a God complex. Just have a look at that and see if you can work out what the student might have to say about it, and those hands reaching to touch each other at the top. What's going on in this image? And then let's have a look at what the student says. Humans are ruining the earth. We think we're gods. We behave as if we're all powerful, but we're stupid. The blindfold, the God complex, copied with the Michelangelo painting, that's about God's gift of life on earth to humanity. And the God complex is our psychological disorder. We believe we're infallible, blinded by arrogance and hubris. This means that the person may fail to acknowledge any evidence of a power higher than themselves. The blindfolded man refuses to acknowledge God and breaks the link between the human and divine. The pupil describes the colouring and the way in which they've chosen to paint this. A disparity between the hands, God and humanity touching, but the disparity between that and the blindfolded, hubristic, God complex, suffering human. And so just how distorted man has become, far from the image of God. And this distortion may ruin the earth. Colleagues, these powerful pieces of work are my claim and my evidence, my proof, I think, for why creative religious education is important, and why this year, between now and the 2022 deadline for the competition on the 31st of July, at the end of the summer term, why I'm urging and arguing that you should engage your pupils in the Spirited Arts competition. Poppy's done a poem about the concept of Gaia, the idea that Earth should be seen as one living organism, and entered this in God's Good Earth. She writes, I wonder what it was like at the start when Gaia was a child. She cared for us, gave us life. We saw no poverty, no pollution, no strife. I wonder what it is like now, backstage in the theatre. Is Gaia on a torture rack as we search for coal, roughly breaking her back? I wonder, can we stop the inevitable from happening? Can we give our life giver the chance not to wither? You wonder why the natural disasters are repeatedly occurring. Gaia sees the backstage shows. Yes, my friends, she knows. I thought this was a very powerfully expressed metaphor. Earth as a living organism in the theatre. The idea that what we see in the theatre, we don't yet see the end of the story. We don't see how the plot unfolds. But the danger, the jeopardy that we've created for the earth and for ourselves is visible in Poppy's wise poem. You see, the mode of creativity, if it's words or if it's picture, if it's video, if it's song, that doesn't particularly matter. It's the profundity of the creativity that RE is always interested in. I wonder if you pause for a moment. You might pause the webinar just at this point and ask yourself which of those 6 pictures you would give the prize to if you had to give out a gold medal. The competition's judged by a panel that I put together every summer. We judge it during August so that we can publish the results in the first half of the new term. And usually I get some students, so maybe A-level religious studies students, A-level art students, undergraduates from those subjects to come into the RE Today NatRate offices and do the judging with us. And we have £1,000 worth of prize money this year. So we're intending to give that as 40 prizes of £25 each to winning entries. If you pause and choose a winner from those, which ones, in your view, would you give gold and silver and bronze medals to? And I wonder if what I've said so far, what you've seen so far, would give you perhaps the impetus, the hope that running this competition in your school would be a good thing to do, would be something that would inspire and energize your pupils' best learning in their religious and moral and values education. And I wonder if your subject teaching needs that kind of boost, a special event, a national competition, a way of engaging pupils, a way of encouraging pupils to see the value of RE for themselves and to go beyond, to go the second mile in their work, not to just finish their homework, but to do it with pride. I love the way in which Spirited Arts enables pupils to proudly present their religious education work in a national forum. Let's go on and turn our attention next to the theme of searching for God. This is an important theme. It's been the most popular theme over the years in our work in the Spirited Arts competition. And a part of why it's valuable is because it's as much for the atheist who says, I've been searching for God and found God nowhere, the agnostic who says, I'm not making much success in my search, as much for those as it is for the Christian who says, I know where God is to be found. God's to be found in Jesus. Or the Muslim who says, God has given us a revelation in the Holy Quran. So searching for God matters to many, not to all. And this theme asks pupils to express creatively, imaginatively, their own sense, their well-informed, their rich knowledge-based sense, their theologically and philosophically astute sense of the idea of searching for God for themselves. I don't know if you're aware there, but have a look at Jewish scripture, Psalm 42, Psalm 43, in which the psalmist repeatedly asks, the heathen say to me continually, where is your God? Where is your God? Where is your God? Those texts are the ones that gave me the idea for this theme originally, and we've used them for many, many years. And I'd encourage you to do some text-based work to enrich your pupils' understanding. Look at what the Quran says, or what Al-Ghazali says, or look at stories of Guru Nanak about the nature and the business of searching for God and finding God. Here are some responses from pupils, which you could show to your pupils as a model and a stimulus for their own reflection. Where is God? Penny says, I don't believe in it. Your request has been denied. If God is, then God is unreachable. God is hidden. Here's a girl in peril, and she keeps praying to God, but no one grabs her hand. She just gets automated messages back that say your request has been denied. All we receive when we pray is a weak cover-up, an automated response. Your request to be happy, to be alone, to do well, to get better has been denied. Penny says, I feel it's very unlikely that God exists. And that's what my pen and ink expresses. Isn't that brilliantly done? What a thoughtful, wise articulation of an atheist response to unanswered prayer Penny has given us. But then you might put right next to it this one from Nick, 14-year-old Nick. Nick has noticed the horror, the agony, the horrific nature of death and of other human problems. He's pictured barbed wire and blood and headlines of disaster. But Nick says newspaper clippings from today's news with barbed wire symbolize war and suffering in the world. But in the top left, there's a big tear in the fabric and underneath it's bright gold. This is where I think God is forever growing larger in the world and in our hearts, biding his time to cover a whole image in gold. I do think that this theology represents something profound from a 14-year-old. It reminds me actually of the theology of Jürgen Moltmann, the genius German theologian of the late 20th century. And you might set that one alongside Penny's and alongside this one from Rebecca, who's also 15, who says this about her work: "Where is God? Seek and you'll find. The girl looks at the shadow full of newspaper cuttings about terror and murder and death, and Jesus stands behind her. The newspaper stuff is what you see every day, tension and crisis. It's easy to focus on the shadows in life. And if you think of God, it's when good stuff happens. But in the shadow, God's there. In the war-torn areas, people's lives can still be transformed. The image of Jesus behind the girl, the color that surrounds them both, illustrates where things look dark. God is working. There is light, even in the shadow." Those are interesting expressions, aren't they, of understandings of the God question, searching for God. Where will you find God? In the shadow, says Rebecca. And then this one by Sam, 15 years of age, showing a prism. "Amidst the millions of not so useful words humans have written about God, I've shown a prism. The light of God might be blinding for us all too much, but the prism splits the blinding light into all the colors. In the iridescent patterns of light through the prism, I've included all the symbols of different faiths and spiritual paths and human insights that I could. I think it's like this. Human minds are weak, too weak to know God, to see God, but religions and other pathways give us a breakdown of the truth. Maybe we can all see one color, our own ideas. Maybe we can learn to see other colors, the ideas of others, but I don't think any of us can see it all." Colleagues, do you want your pupils to do work like this? Because you see, ever so often when people send in their spirited arts entries, they send me a compliment slip from their school that says, "I never knew my kids could do this. This work is way better than I expected. I didn't know they were thinking like this." And if the Art in Heaven competition has the power to unlock this kind of quality, and I'm not saying that all of them will do it, you won't get 100 like this from 100 pupils. But for every one who can paint a prism like this, who can conceptualize and conceive what Sam has said here, for everyone who can do that, there's 100 other young people who are thinking deeply about religious and spiritual questions and who have something to say. And the Art in Heaven competition is a way of enabling them to say it. Could I ask you to pause again at this point, please? You've seen the responses of pupils to 3 themes. The first of our 5 themes this year, there is more in common than that which divides us. The second, God's good earth. And the third theme, searching for God. I wonder if you would just pause the program and write a memo to yourself or to other teachers at your school, to your department, whoever you work with, and write a memo that says, between now and the 29th of July, that's when you'll need to post them off to be with us by the 31st. We're going to do this. Make a note of any questions you have. If during the pause you want to go on the website, natrade.org.uk, and look at the spirited arts material, do that as well. Take a pause, make a note, start to make a plan, please. Can I particularly suggest here that working with 14 to 19-year-olds at the Spirited Arts competition, your A-level students, your GCSE cohort, students who are doing both art and religious study for examination level, can I suggest that working with 14 to 19s is especially valuable? It's easy enough to make this happen in Key Stage 3, but why shouldn't the older students get the opportunity for creative engagement? Often when they do this, they do work so memorable that they don't need to revise it. They carry it automatically with them into their examination studies. And I'd really love it if your school sends us some entries from 14 to 19-year-olds in the coming year. The next theme I'll do quite briefly, because in some ways this one is most suited to work from primary schools, but not completely so. Because we do study, don't we? They're on the GCSE specifications. They're in the higher papers. They're in the study that pupils do for religious education examinations. So if you're teaching pupils about Diwali and Eid, Vesak and Easter, Shabbat and Christmas, Remembrance and Red Nose Day for that matter, or Valentine's Day, if you're teaching pupils about human communities and how they celebrate, then you might want to do a piece of work, possibly a collective piece here. We love to get collective entries where 30 students have each made their own unique and individual contribution to a collective piece of art. Maybe you'll look at one festival, maybe you'll look at the comparison between different festivals within one religion, maybe you'll look at the comparison between 3 festivals from three different traditions, 2 religious and 1 non-religious. I don't know, but just notice how a religious studies approach can really inform the topic of celebrations. I'm not happy for work on Diwali or Christmas or Easter in the secondary school to replicate what happens in early years and infants. I think we need to go beyond that. But let me show you, this is what can happen in year 1. Year 1, year 2, amazing, infant work. This piece of work is called Celebrating Life, Celebrating Creation. And it was created at Cotmanthorpe Primary School with year 2 pupils. And the pupils in 7 different groups made 7 different panels, which the teacher has then built together. The whole work of art is quite large. And in each of those, you can see Genesis chapter 1, God created the heavens and the earth, separating the water from the water above from the water below, creating the land and the trees and the vegetation, making the sun, the moon, the stars, the birds and the fish, humanity and every animal upon the earth. Just notice that these children, 6 and 7-year-olds, have done a celebrating life, celebrating creation piece of work. And you see their comments there. God created everything and made life on earth, give us a good earth to live on. We celebrate the earth by looking after it. God made the animals and we should care for them. You see those lessons, sometimes secondary RE is satisfied with those kind of insights. But children age 7 are capable of that. So where do we go that carries them beyond those basic starting points? Maybe Emma points the way with her beautifully written CELEBRATION celebration word there. I like the way that she's made every letter intriguingly unique. And Emma says that religious studies looks at all the different religions in relation to each other. So Christians and Muslims think, oh, we have a festival and it's unique, but historic events, giving gifts, doing charity, rejoicing together in families, those are actually common elements. You notice here that Emma is kind of using the discipline of religious studies to come up with some inter-religious understanding of her own, isn't she? If you're not religious, this is also pretty similar to a big sports event or a big gig. We're more similar in celebrating our big days than we sometimes notice. Do you think that Emma has crystallized a religious studies insight in her work there? I thought so, and I was impressed with the 13-year-old who was able to do that sort of standing back, that kind of analysis. And here's Gemma, not a Hindu, who has created a beautiful piece of work about Diwali. You see Lakshmi, the goddess there. Ganesha is also pictured on the Om symbol, and the fireworks and the diva lamps. And Gemma says, when I was a little child in primary school, I learned Diwali, but I never really thought about it for myself. Hindus, they use the Rangoli patterns, the storytelling, and this picture is actually made, can you see it's made of rice and glitter glue, and it's like a Rangoli pattern in itself in some ways. She says they use the Rangoli and the storytelling to show the possibility of a changed life, a joyful celebration that changes your life this year, right now. So Diwali celebrates the triumph of the light. She said, I heard that when I was a small child, but I'm older now and I can see it's a kind of universal meaning. Again, has Gemma got a good insight from her religious study into the way the festival works? I'd say yes. She concludes, we all need the fresh start, the festival of new beginnings. Do that every year. That seems a good way to remind ourselves of something that we often forget. Well done, Gemma. Your engagement with the Hindu festival of Diwali goes way beyond the diva lamps and the Diwali cards and the Rangoli patterns. It's a thoughtful engagement. And here's another, which is by Lindsay. And Lindsay has been considering the celebration, the annual remembrance of the enlightenment of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And she pictures the Buddha seated under the Bodhi tree, and she pictures him remembering the foresights from years earlier. She describes her work like this. Siddhartha under the Bodhi tree, the purple swirls symbolize that these pictures are only thoughts. I've linked his enlightenment to the foresights from years ago. When he sees the holy man, he realizes that to release yourself from suffering, you must follow a middle path. This picture is above the sun. There's so much suffering in the world, you must do something about it. The stripes from the bed show the life coming from it. The flowers around the ill person show care. They've put the flowers there to show the suffering. Suffering affects so many people. Lindsay honestly says, I find the Four Noble Truths difficult to explain. Me too, and I'm an RE teacher of 4 decades standing. But, says Lindsay, they must link up with the 4 sites in the story, I think. Buddhists celebrate this festival every year. Do you see what's happening there, colleagues? That Lindsay has picked up a lot of the detail of the life story of the Buddha. She's connected it to the ways in which those events are remembered and celebrated in the Buddhist community. And she's struggling, isn't she, to philosophize her way, to build her understanding of what it was that the Buddha saw when he was enlightened, and how it is that that has come to command the allegiance, the following of hundreds of millions of people 2,500 years later. That theme of celebration, as I say, might look like a bit of a primary theme, but I think if you're doing celebrations in different religions at GCSE, then that might actually make an excellent point at which to use the disciplines of religious study, sociology of religion, and to get pupils to engage with those disciplines in the way that they analyze the meanings and significance and practices of different festivals in the different religions that they're studying. I'm kind of challenging you there. I want to challenge you to have a go at that with your pupils. Impressive work from Lindsay. The 5th theme that we've put into the competition this year picks up on the increasing use of the Religion and Worldviews title for RE, RVE, RME, whatever we've been calling it. And this is a very fruitful theme, I think, although we'll have to wait and see because it's a new one. We haven't used this before. It takes the idea that pupils stand in a particular position in relation to the religious materials and the worldview materials that they study. And it asks pupils to reflect on their own beliefs and values and identities and positions, the truth as they see it. So a religion is a kind of a worldview. In fact, religions include many worldviews. There are liberal Christian worldviews and conservative traditional Christian worldviews, just as there are radical Hindu viewpoints and conservative Hindu ways of looking at the world as well. Religions are one kind of influence on our worldviews. And humanism can be a worldview too, can't it? A permanent alternative to religion. I think that's quite a good way to describe humanism. Atheism. That's a bit different because in some ways it's a not statement, isn't it? Atheists are all different, just like Christians and humanists actually. But atheists may say, "Oh, there's no God, and therefore I will live the one life I have from my worldview with vigor and dignity and purpose and strength." So, in this theme, I'm wanting to encourage you to get pupils to really consider their own view of the world. And that's quite useful to have lenses, tinted glasses, microscope, spectacles, magnifying glass, those as ways of looking at how we see the world. Because born where we are, situated where we are, many of your pupils born in England, maybe born in England 15 years ago, 2007, that would be. Those pupils have grown up and have been enculturated and influenced by the particularities of a 21st century British worldview. A 21st century British post-Christian, post-atheist, secular, post-secular worldview, very complicated. But if you, as a teacher of RE, if you can get your pupils to see their own worldview as clearly as you get them to see the Christian, the Muslim worldviews, then you're doing your job really well. So how to illustrate that? Well, let me give you a few examples of the kind of work that I would love to see in this theme of spirited arts this coming year. I love Yolanda's piece of work. She's 9, and she's made this sculpture out of pink hearts and red paper and a paper box and some wicker stalks that she's mounted the hearts upon. And her commentary on this is very simple, a view of the world. She says, my model is called All You Need Is Love. Some people don't believe in God, but they do believe in love. I'm one of these people. Has Yolanda, 9 years of age, articulated an aspect of her view of the world with clarity and precision? You bet she has. And I love the way she uses John Lennon and Paul McCartney's text. All you need is love, to put that into her work. Together now, all you need is love. And then there's Lara. Lara's picture is complex, but she says, my worldview says, we are the Big Bang. In my picture, you can see planets colliding. And it all explodes into all these strange dots and shapes of different colours. Particles came together to form our solar system. And these particles and the big ones, they say something to her. I'm not sure she's quite got this clear, but she says, even though we're all different shapes and sizes and colours, we all matter, we're equal in some way. And then her killer punch is the question at the end of her text. I'm left wondering, was God responsible for the Big Bang? Did the Big Bang, is that a big cosmic accident? Did that happen without purpose or meaning? Or is there purpose, meaning, divinity perhaps behind? Do you think Lara has expressed an aspect of her worldview in ways that would impress you from some of your secondary pupils, even though she's only 10? I'd say so. Here's the third one. And 13-year-old Mia, who goes to school in Marlborough, has taken the metaphor of journey. Look how brilliantly she's done that by creating the face that she's made of this old man out of an Ordnance Survey map. And she's overpainted it with real skill, fantastic, skillful work. And then on the left-hand side, what can you read there? Your faith can move mountains, and your doubts can. Faith comes from within. You see some names in there: Mother Teresa, Malala, Mahatma Gandhi. Mia describes her work like this: doubt. Our journey changes our view of the world. And my artwork is about that path through life. I've drawn on a map. Doubt and faith can lead us in different paths. The old man's face is for mortality. And the decisions that we make, if you give up on faith, for instance, well, that might lead to you losing the will to live. That's true for some people. The other half of my face expresses the ideas in text. Anne Frank, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, these are people who've used their faith to promote equality. And this quote, I show you doubt to prove faith exists. That's my opinion, says Mia, age 13. Will the journey of life take us to faith or doubt or both? I love that as a worldview expression. I think Mia expresses the position she's at, where she's at the moment, a position of uncertainty. For so many of our teenagers, for so many of our young people in secondary RE age ranges, then uncertainty is a part of their picture of the world in which they find themselves. They are inching towards, feeling their way towards the perspectives that will be theirs as they mature, as they grow into adult life. And as religious education teachers, I think we should be honest brokers, fair describers of the variety of human worldviews to our pupils. One more, fourth one, last example of the day. This, you must imagine, is about 2 meters wide. It's over 1 meter tall. And it's a fabric. It's a tapestry. It's a piece of work of extraordinary skill and beauty. I don't know if any of you looking at this can recognize it. It's actually off the town of Kendal in the Lake District. And the young person who's made it has done so. She was it's a winning entry to the Art in Heaven competition from a few years ago. And Lauren, who made it, has done so to show her position in the world. It's a very subtle piece of RE. She says, a view of the world from where I live. As Gaudi, the Catalan Spanish architect, said, the straight line belongs to man, but the curved line belongs to God. Nature in the Bible blends nature with God. I look to the hills, says Psalm 121. Where does my help come from? From the Lord who made heaven and earth. The basic shape of the mural is the hills and rivers that surround her home in Kendal in the Lake District, with parts of the buildings inside the hills surrounding the town, like the feeling that God surrounds us. I wonder what you make of Lauren's description of the way that the place in which she's lived all her life, the geography, the history of the town of Kendal have shaped her, and the scripture, the Christian spirituality that has clearly shaped her too. I do think that this is a work of particular genius. It's beautifully crafted. And that's one of the 3 tests we use when we're judging the work in spirited arts. We ask, is it well crafted? Was it done in pencil in 10 minutes? Probably not a winner. But is it the product of careful crafting the application of pupils' skills? Was it well crafted? Second question, does it answer the theme effectively and refer properly to religions and beliefs? See, if a piece of work is just about a social issue or an ethical question, that's not likely to win either. It's much more likely to win if it engages with scripture, with Quran, with Gita, with Torah, with Bible, or if it engages with significant religious concepts and ideas. Does it respond to the theme? The view of the world, I think Lauren's piece really does, in a very subtle way. Is it well crafted? Does it respond thoughtfully, religiously, spiritually, philosophically to the theme? And thirdly, is it in some ways original? Does it have something fresh to say? I've seen nothing like Lauren's work. I think it's an extraordinary and unique piece of work expressing the way I look at the world, because I was born in Kendal 18 years ago, because the Lake District, its hills and its curves and its valleys have shaped my consciousness, and because I've also been shaped by the Christian spirituality of nature and God and Psalms and the Lord who made heaven and earth. Fascinating. I come towards the end of my time in this webinar, and what I've done is to try and draw your attention in creative, productive ways to the challenges, the possibilities that this competition offers you. You could enter Spirited Arts in 2022 with every pupil from your school. You could enter with one class. There's loads of different ways to do it. If you want to, you can give your pupils all 5 of the themes, more in common than what divides us: God's good earth, searching for God, a view of the world, celebrations, and let your pupils choose. Or alternatively, you could say, no, I've made the choice. We're all going to do God's good earth. We're all going to do a view of the world, because that fits in with what we're studying in year 7 or 9 or 11. Okay, that's fine. That's a matter for you. Some key questions that will help you as you think through your spirited arts methodology are these 5. First of all, I've emphasized that religions are highly creative. So provoke your pupils by showing them creative bits of religion. Here are 10 stunning mosques. Here are 5 remarkable works of art from the Hindu tradition. Here are 6 examples of Christian literature that will get your brain unfogged and spiritually tingling. And I've emphasized that you don't have to draw, you don't have to paint to enter the competition. Music and poetry are welcome as well. But the key mode of creativity that religions are interested in is actually making meaning, not necessarily making architecture, but making meaning out of human experience. I argue that every human has a creative dimension to their human nature. That doesn't mean, some of us are terrified by art and horrified at the fact that we might have to write poetry. Fine. But find your creativity. For some people, it's actually gardening or cookery, isn't it? I think all humans have a creative side. And I want to tap into that in the skills that we ask pupils to bring to their RE. Because so many pupils do their best, their most memorable, their most inspired work when they've been given a creative horizon to aim for. Many of your pupils are going to amaze you if you enter Art in Heaven this year. And then this, that creativity is really close to spirituality. For many people, millions of people in Britain today who never go near a church or a mosque, when they make, when they create, when they imagine and put it into action, that's how they express their spirituality. So I wonder if those 5 things that I believe about why spirited arts methods are useful in religious education, I wonder if for you, those principles are also those which might lead to an increasingly creative religious education. Or perhaps you've got another justification, another way of looking at that. Over the years, teachers have run the competition in lots of different ways. And these are all potentially effective and they're all welcome. And I wonder how you're going to do it. Some people run a spirited arts week in the summer term every year for the whole school. So they get all 11 to 15s or 11 to 16s working on a spirited arts theme. Or perhaps they do it as a spirited arts day conference for pupils who are not doing examination religious studies. Or perhaps they do it as a special unit of work over 6 to 8 lessons for all the year 7s or all the year 8s or all the year 9s. Some people run a homework club competition They invite pupils who'd like to stay for an hour a week for 6 weeks on Thursdays and come along to the art rooms and do their RE and art in the art rooms. That could be a great way to do it, because a collaboration with the art department often shows, I can tell, people send their work in. If they've collaborated with the art department, sometimes the pupils' use of equipment and tools, their use of strategies and resources and materials is outstanding because they've had input from the art department. Could you do that? Maybe you could launch this in assembly. Maybe you could run assemblies for each year group that show off some of what you've seen in the PowerPoint that I've been using today. You could demo some of the themes to your pupils and then follow it up in lessons. Maybe you could get a local church, a local mosque, a local mundia, a local synagogue to come and show off some of the artistic, liturgical, or worship-based resources that they use inside the faith community, and use that creativity of religion to stimulate your pupils. Maybe you could get group project work from teams of students, suggest to students that they work in 2s, 4s, 12s, 30s, a whole class, to create a communal shared product, a teamwork piece of art. Some of those tremendously powerful. Maybe you could get a local artist who is themselves a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, to come and work with pupils in your school, or a local artist who is a human to come and work on the spirituality of art and make the links to particular religions yourself as the teacher of RE in the context. Maybe you could get your GCSE group. I know one school where there's a GCSE group of only 15 or 16 students. And one of the things they did in year 10 was to run for year 7 the Spirited Arts competition. And of course, you're allowed to send 10 entries into us. In that school, they got about 180 entries, and the year 10s decided which 10 should be sent in. They had a sort of local round of judging. There's a few ideas, and you'll have some more. What can you do to give pupils the opportunities to benefit from this kind of creative, imaginative, insightful religious education? Something I hope. You've seen loads of examples there today from the arts and poetry sections of our Spirited Arts competitions. Could I urge you, as the webinar finishes, to plan for your learners to get the challenge to their own position, their own beliefs and skills, to use their knowledge of religions, to use it in depth, plan for some super set entries to send in. 31st of July, remember, the closing date for the competition. That's the closing date every year. And get the pupils to write about how good their art is. We put a writing frame for that, which really works. It really helps. It gives pupils 20 prompts, ask them to choose 6 or 8 of them, write up to 250 words about your piece of work. Because so much of what I've shown you today, maybe you liked the art, but you really get it, don't you, when you read what the pupils say about it. The art and the writing are both equally important in this competition. The interesting, inspirational, winning, and highly commended entries from the web gallery, you can click your way through to those. I hope you do. Spirited Arts, I'm proud of. Been running it for 15 years. There's a competition for creativity in RE for every pupil in any school right across the UK. I urge and encourage you to take up the opportunities that it presents this year. Thank you so much for joining the webinar for the last hour of your time and your thinking. I hope it's given you some inspiration and enthusiasm to go away and do some fun stuff with your pupils around the creative arts and religious education. Thank you very much.